Hello, everyone. We are doing a class on the hot current home decor trends that may be wrecking your feng shui. About 5 years ago, I did a similar class on what the trends were back then that were bad feng shui. Unfortunately, most of those are gone. Let me go ahead and share my presentation with you. 4 hot home design trends that are wrecking your feng shui. My name is Moni Castaneda, and any of you who is new to me, you should know that I will never ask to spend any significant amount of time with me that you don't learn something that has the potential to change your life, that is transformative in some way. So I got a degree in architecture from my home country of Ecuador before moving to the United States. It's going to be 30 years this summer. And I have been practicing Feng Shui over 20 years. And I've also trained in several healing modalities. These are the books that I have written on Feng Shui. I have written a lot about Feng Shui. The other day, I took my books and I put them on a scale. I have written 12 and a half pounds of Feng Shui. My YouTube channel, website and blog, and my training website have had over 1 million visitors. And the reason we're so popular is because we are presenting Feng Shui in a way that is different from everybody else. My YouTube channel has been named in the top 10 for the whole world several years in a row. My website and blog have been named top 9 in the whole world for Feng Shui. And my training website has been listed in the top 5 in Feng Shui courses, especially my Feng Shui consultant training. And at Feng Shui for us, we have some core values. This is how we do business. The first core value is that we teach fear-free Feng Shui. We talk only about love and above energies and tools. We don't use the compass or one numbers because that is a fear-based type of Feng Shui that makes you afraid of some of the compass directions. We use the love very little. We always recommend that you make small, significant changes. And we always try to do everything in a way that doesn't require great expenses unless requested. You know, some clients, some students, they want to do a full renovation. We also teach the path of least resistance. We use the least amount of effort at the right time to produce the best results. And my goal is to create independent clients. My goal is to set you free so that you develop your own taste. And in the future, you can move on to make your own decisions without always depending on your Feng Shui consultant to figure out if something is right or not for your home. We're going to talk a little bit about how we are influenced. Can everybody recognize this that you see here? It is an electrical tower, right? I think very few people, except maybe some engineers, would say this is beautiful. And when I was a child, the first time somebody showed me a picture of the Eiffel Tower, I thought, oh, that's an interesting electrical tower. I didn't think it was beautiful until somebody told me it's beautiful. And though I understand the engineering feat that the Eiffel Tower was at the time that it was built, and even though I understand that it has become a symbol that people, I think just about anybody that goes to Paris is going to want to take a picture with the Eiffel Tower. But you ask yourselves, look at the Eiffel Tower right now, look at the different elements of the Eiffel Tower and ask yourselves, is this really beautiful? Or have I been conditioned to think that this is beautiful? Here's another example. So when I was a child, my great-grandmother told me, she showed me a picture of the Mona Lisa and she told me, this is the most beautiful painting that has ever been painted. And I didn't see it, you know. I was like, why? You know, I don't understand, I don't agree, I don't believe. And so later on, when I was older and I studied the history of art, I could see that for the time, there were great advances in how people painted, that some of the things that were done, like the landscape in the background and the way the colors were blended in the face were really remarkable for the time. But when I was a child and I looked at another painting, like the Venus from Botticelli, I could see this was beautiful, in my opinion, and this wasn't. But of course, today I can understand this probably has greater artistic value than the other. And the reason I'm sharing these pictures today is because I want you to think about how you're being influenced and how you have been influenced since you were a child to accept certain things as beautiful or even perfect. You know, people say this painting on the left is perfect. And maybe you didn't agree, but you didn't speak up. What colors do you see? When you look at these mountains, what colors do you see? When you give a person some crayons and you ask them to paint and color a mountain, They're usually going to use the color green, or they're going to use the color brown, and some people use gray. But if you see here, blue and purple, right? But when I was a child, I always wondered about that because I lived in an area, in Quito, Ecuador, with lots of mountains. And when somebody asked me what color is a mountain, and they expecting me to say green at school, right? I was like, that's not my experience. Like ultramarine blue was the color that I most often saw in mountains. And in Ecuador, it's in the Andes, it's on the equator, mountains were often purple, and sometimes they were teal. And so there's so many things that we're conditioned to think and understand in a certain way that are not necessarily true to our own observations. And what happens over time is that you become insecure. You perceive certain things about life, about reality, but other people tell you otherwise. For example, you'll go to kindergarten and they'll give you a green crayon to paint the mountain. And over time, you stop trusting your own perceptions. And that affects you later on when you make decisions in home decor. Now, designers, they have to offer something new, different, and exciting every year. I was just watching a master class on some designer, and they were saying, if you don't reinvent yourself, if you don't do something new, every single year you become irrelevant. People no longer hire you, people are not interested in you, and they actually believe that the job of an interior designer is to come up with new trends. So now we're getting to the meat of this class, right? Which is the 4 current home decor trends that are bad feng shui. The first one we're going to look at is black walls and black kitchens. The color black on accent walls, closets, or cabinets, a whole room painted black, or black ceiling. Some of the things that the designers are recommending that we do right now, they're only okay for businesses, but never okay in a home. So these black walls and black kitchens, right? The color black is a very powerful color. A little bit can be very welcome. But if you use the color black as a major color in your design, it can get really heavy, and it actually can make people blue. Now, trends go back and forth like a pendulum. And so I knew this would happen 5 years ago when I did my other class on the trends that were ruining feng shui. I already knew that people would start using a lot of black, and one of the other trends that you're going to see now, because it's the opposite side, right? It's a pendulum. During the pandemic, people were crazy with white and gray. I had a friend that was trying to buy a home during that time, and every single home with no exceptions had been repainted in white or light gray. Now, the very interesting thing about this is that COVID is an illness that affects the lungs, right? And the lungs in Chinese medicine, of which feng shui is part, the lungs are associated with grief. And so there was a respiratory illness. There was a lot of grief in the world from the lockdowns and from other things. And the color white is what is recommended to help people go through grief. And so I wasn't surprised that during COVID, this became a trend, that everything had to be so white and so light gray that it became clinical. And it actually looked almost like a hospital for many homes. And now the swinging of the pendulum has brought us to dark walls, dark cabinets, and dark everything in some cases, right? And so while adding the color black in feng shui is a symbol of money, it only works for adding small items in black. It doesn't work when you use the black color for everything, or for really large pieces of furniture, or for whole walls. It doesn't work, and it tends to have the opposite effect. And so while somebody might think, I'm going to paint my kitchen black, and then I'm going to get more money, the opposite is likely to happen. It's like when you have a garden, you have to water it just so much, right? Or if you have houseplants, you have to water them maybe once a week. But if you water them every day, you're going to kill the roots. And so it's similar to that. So having too much black is not recommended. And it's not just black. So in some cases, it can be like a really, really dark chocolate brown or a navy blue. And in feng shui, for feng shui purposes, a dark chocolate brown, a hunter green, or a navy blue are the same as black. They're considered in the same family. If you went with the craziness of everything white, short of having to remodel your whole kitchen, painting black over white cabinets is easy to do. So for a lot of people that got sick of the white for good reasons, right? Because it's hard to keep clean, because it's not cozy, it became a really easy solution to say, well, let's just paint things darker. But that becomes too oppressive, so it's not a good idea. Associated to this trend is drenching. Have you heard the term drenching before? Drenching is when you take the color of the wall and carry that color to all the wood trim and the ceiling. And so drenching is going to make people very unhappy in a few years. Now, this image was generated by AI. I made this in Photoshop. That's why you see it looks a little weird over here, because I couldn't find in my stock photography a good photo of drenching. But when you start taking a color paint into every piece of wooden molding, when you put it in every crevice, and later on, when you get tired of that, it's going to be very, very hard to strip that paint from the wood to bring it back to something that is not so dramatic, so extreme. So drenching creates drama. And after being through so many years of just white and gray where there was no drama, people just want a lot of drama, but it's not a good idea. About half of the designers I follow right now are recommending drenching the colors into the wooden molding, the crown molding, and the ceiling. And that is not recommended in Feng Shui. When you put the wall color on the ceiling, that room is going to feel oppressive. So here's examples of the drenching that I was telling you before, right? But also painting a door and the frame in the same color as the wall to make the door disappear. You can paint the door in the same color as the wall, but you should keep the frame of the door its original color. Like if it was white, keep it white. If it was a wood stain, keep it a wood stain. And the reason for that is when the trend changes, when this goes away, it's going to be very difficult to strip the paint of this frame and to restore it to the white or the wood color that you had before. And another thing you should not do is block a door with a chair. If you have a door, you should have access to the door. It also is believed to affect the kidneys. If you have too much dark, too much black in your home, it's believed to affect the kidneys. In ancient East Asian medicine, even wearing too much of the color black is believed to affect your kidneys. And the kidneys in ancient East Asian medicine are also associated with feelings of fear and guilt. There's a lot of not nice things that can happen when you add a lot of black to your home. The second home decor trend that is bad Feng Shui is to have excessive color, patterns, and wallpaper. And right now we're seeing it's also an effect of the pendulum. The one extreme to go back with the pendulum is everything dark, going from white to everything dark. But the other extreme is going from white and minimalist to maximalist. So oversized patterns, gaudy designs, putting these things on ceilings and on furniture, just going overboard, like kind of Baroque. And so we went from these really clean, minimalistic designs that a lot of people like, but are hard to live with. They're good for your eyes. It's nice to look at something minimalist and it gives you a sense of relief, but it's not going to give you an interesting life. And so we have gone to excessive patterns, colors, and wallpaper. And so this is a photo from a home in the 60s. This used to be the case, right? That wallpaper was preferred to painting and that every available bit of wall was covered in wallpaper. And today, these very busy wallpapers are coming back. And you see things that are very elaborate, that have strong colors, strong contrast. They're just very, very busy. And to have good Feng Shui, you need a balance of busy versus plain. You need some areas that are kind of charged with activity and patterns and other areas that are clear and clean. You need to give your eyes a break. And you don't make patterns compete against themselves for good Feng Shui. These are the kinds of things that you can do. So this is a good example because it's only done on one wall. You have creative, colorful patterns on one wall, but you have a calm blue-gray on the other side. So doing it like that, you can get away with it. If you do it all over the place, it becomes too much. And so this is an example of these wallpapers that we're seeing today. Everything is overdone. The images are larger than life. So for example, if there's a flower, it's much larger than the real size of the flower in reality. And it can be very, very dramatic. This is another example. If you want to do something this dramatic, you do it on only one wall. You don't do it all over the place. You do it on only one wall. And we have a big advantage today compared to in the 60s when this was the fashion, right? The big advantage today is that we have wallpaper that can be super easily put on your wall. It's like a decal. It's very easy to put on. You can also peel it off, move it to another wall. So you can do this. If you want that drama, you can definitely do this, but do it only on one wall. The third home decor trend that is bad feng shui is leaning mirrors. And I have to tell you, I really searched before this class when I was doing research for this class. I couldn't find a single well-known designer that is not doing this. Every single one of them is doing this. They put large mirrors on the floor and they lean them on the wall, or they put them on the fireplace mantles and they lean them on the wall, or they put them on pieces of furniture. It's like all of a sudden it is unpopular to hang a mirror. So when you have leaning mirrors, it's not good. First of all, because there's a risk of breaking things. When the mirror is leaning on the wall, it could fall. It could slide and fall and break. When you are walking around it, you could kick it. When you are vacuuming, you could hit it with a vacuum. So when a big mirror goes all the way to the floor and just leaning on the wall instead of hanging on the wall, it's very easy to break. And that possibility that something could break is going to make you nervous. Just the possibility that it could happen increases stress. There's another issue here when you have these mirrors that are leaning. That see how this reflects here? You see the straight lines here from the window and how they are tilted on the mirror. The mirror that is leaning against the wall, a mirror that is not straight, that mirror is going to make it look, or it'll make you feel like you have a constant hangover. When you partied a little too much the night before and then the next morning the world leans a little bit on you, you're going to get that constant feeling when you have a leaning mirror. So do not do that. Mirrors need to be hung on the wall. Mirrors need to be completely horizontal or completely vertical. So it's okay to have a mirror on a wall hanging properly, right? It's also okay to have a mirror surface, say, for a coffee table, as long as the corners are not sharp. You can have a mirror tray that is completely horizontal, but mirrors should not be at an angle. So the first bad trend is the black walls and black kitchens and also drenching. The second one is excessive colors, patterns, and wallpaper. The third one is leaning mirrors. And the fourth one is dining room benches. These are super popular. So many dining sets now come with benches instead of chairs, or a combination of chairs and benches. And these are really, really bad feng shui. And you can see why. So you may look at this and think, oh, how pretty, how practical. I love that. If you think about it, where do you have benches for people to sit down and eat? You have benches in school cafeterias and in prisons. You shouldn't want your family to eat that way. The chairs at the dining table represent one person. When you have family harmony, every person has one chair they own, where they can go and sit, that if they need to get up, they can move back and get up, where they don't have to share, where you don't have to make one person move so the other person can get up to go to the bathroom. So it's super, super important that you give every person one chair, not a bench. Family harmony is super, super important. And most of the strength of the family is made at the dining table. They have actually had a study looking at kids that finish college successfully. And the most important common denominator that can predict success in college is family dinners. The kids where the families have family dinners were much more likely to be successful in college. And so you want to make sure that each person has their own chair. There can be a differentiation. So at the head of the table and the end of the table, you can have a chair that is a little bigger or feels more important. But it should be a similar kind of chair, maybe just with some slight differences to emphasize the hierarchy, because a family to function properly needs to be hierarchical. You can be friends with your kids once your kids are adults, but when your kids are little, or teenagers especially, there should be a clear sense of hierarchy. If you can imagine here, right, you have a family sitting at the table, and this family has 6 people. 4 of these people have their own comfortable chair that they can sit on and move around as they need. And then there's two people over here that have to say, excuse me, if they have to get up to go to the bathroom. Or one person may have to get up so the other person can move the bench back so they can get in and sit. It creates all kinds of situations where you can have stress and friction. And the more stress and friction you have, the more arguments you are going to have. So there's a whole summary: black walls, excessive wallpaper, linen mirrors or art, because it's not just mirrors. One thing that we're seeing is framed pieces of art leaning on walls or on pieces of furniture instead of being completely properly fixed to the walls. And then dining room benches. These are the trends that I have seen. And there's more, but I just chose the ones that have the potential to create the most problems in your feng shui. I don't know if it's a trend or not, but what about booths in the kitchen? I always like the coziness of booths in restaurants. For a while, corner breakfast nooks for kitchen were popular. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That definitely has been a trend, and that is only okay if you have a tiny house. For example, if it's like the size of an RV, then it's okay to do that, because restaurants do this so they can have more people in one place, so they can give you some sense of privacy while you are in a restaurant eating with a lot of other people. But the same thing happens as with the bench, right? If you have a booth, the person that is closest to the wall can't get up to go get something, like get some cutlery or go to the bathroom, without asking the other person to get up. And so that also creates friction, and it can lead to arguments. So I'm going to share with you now the essence of the home that makes you proud. And that is to figure out what you like. A lot of people have never stopped to think about what they actually like. A lot of people I work with, they're very nervous that if they actually do what they want to do, if they do what they like in their home, somebody is going to laugh at them. They're really concerned that if they really get that sofa they want, somebody they respect is going to come into their house and say, that looks ridiculous, or that looks ugly, or that looks horrible, or that they're going to have a party and people are going to be talking behind their back about the terrible choices they made. And so the gist of having a home you truly love is to get things that even if everybody you knew was in disagreement with you, you would still love them. So for example, I don't have one of these Turkish lamps, but I love them. I've been thinking about getting one for my place. I love this so much that if I got a lamp like this for my home and put it up, every person in the world could come in and tell me that that's ugly. I wouldn't care, because I love it, right? And so if you start making decisions like that, where you only add to your home things that you truly love, this idea that you have to please other people is going to disappear. And that is the way to be happy at home. But you also have to respect the basic rules of feng shui, right? Because somebody could say, I just love glass tables with sharp corners, like this one in the example. But the truth is, that's dangerous. If you have a table like this that is glass and has a sharp corner, and you have a toddler in the house, you are constantly going to be worried that that toddler is going to hit their eye with it or split their forehead with that table, because it's dangerous. So the first rule of feng shui is that everything you do needs to be safe. Anything that is potentially dangerous should be a no-no. You got to be safe, but you also should not self-sabotage. So sometimes people say, well, I want to do this because I like it, because I love it. And but it ends up self-sabotaging. Like, for example, here in the corner, you could see I just love dry plants. I love to have a pot in my dining room that reminds me of death, because dried branches, they remind you of death, things that have died. And they would also be dangerous to a child. And so you have to not self-sabotage. And you also got to be functional, right? And so you got to do things that work for you, that make your life easier instead of making your life harder. So what you love is not enough. So when there's a surge in trend, do what you love and disregard everything else. That's the one side of the equation. But the other side of the equation is that things mean things. And so, for example, if you have these branches over here, what feeling does this branch give you over here? I look at that, and what comes to my mind is, I really don't know what that is. Like what? Who would think that it's a good idea to put that over there? It's a dry branch. I would be thinking, how am I going to dust that when it gets dirty? It just doesn't look beautiful. it just looks strange. And so things mean things. Dry branches mean death. And that is true for every person in the world. And so Margaret is saying, is hideous and insect catcher. So Sarah will say oppressive, hanging above. Yeah, that definitely, this gives you an oppressive feeling. I can't even imagine, I can put myself in the shoes of a person who would say, let's do that, let's just put that. So like the only thing I could imagine is maybe some person went on a trip and picked up from a trip and is a memory from a trip, right? So you want to stay current while not breaking the bank, because there is a pleasant feeling from doing things that are trendy, doing what other people are doing, and feeling that you are feeling like you're part of the group. When making big purchases, make timeless choices. So for example, if you're making a choice about replacing your whole floor, make a timeless choice. Choose something that you're not going to get sick of in 2 years. But you can be trendy on the small things. Make trendy choices for small or inexpensive items or things that can be changed easily. So I want to tell you now about the Dream Home Lab, which is a group program where people can turn their current homes into dream homes with my guidance. So in the Dream Home Lab, we have Q&A. You can ask questions every day about your home or about Feng Shui. You can get feedback once per week. You can submit photos for me to critique, to give you feedback. And we have times for you to attend these meetings that are okay for people living in the United States, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, and East Asia. So we have sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, so everybody can have a time to meet with me in Zoom meetings and ask the questions about their home. I also do home clearings every single week. I use a technique called angelic feng shui. So every single week on Tuesdays, I do a distance clearing to remove bad and less than low frequencies from all the homes of people participating in the group, if they give me permission, of course, once per week. And you don't have to be present, just give permission. And you also get one-on-one help. So if you're in the Dream Home Lab, you get a private half-hour Zoom call with me every month. And I want to show you some before and after images of people just like you. So this before and after, this was a very old home and the kitchen needed remodeling. And this student in the Dream Home Lab, she wanted a remodel, but she wanted to keep a feeling that was appropriate for the age and the style of construction of the house. And look at this, what an amazing difference. We also have decluttering journeys in the Dream Home Lab. And so look at the before and after. Amazing. Another example of turning, this was a closet that was suffering from humidity. It was just abandoned and it was just a clutter magnet. And it was turned into a reading paradise for the grandchildren. Look at this before and after. This couple had been married very happily for many years, and they didn't have a headboard. So she added a headboard and she added different lamps. I love to take the story of these lamps because look at the lamps on the left. The husband was always tilting the lampshade so he could read his books at night. And in the morning, the wife would get up and the lamp would get tilted and look like it was about to fall, and that annoyed her. And so all she did was just get taller lamps so that her husband didn't have to move the lampshade anymore. This is another before and after. This is in Australia. These chairs, as you can see, they needed to be reupholstered. Just by changing the color, the dining room became much more appealing. This is another example of before and after. And you can see here, very few changes were made, adding some plants, adding some candles, covering the mirrors. You shouldn't have mosaic mirrors, right? The frame of this mirror was a mosaic, covering that up. And the change is amazing. Another view of the same space. And look at this. This is one of my favorite before and afters because no money was spent. It was just moving the sofa a little bit to the right and moving the rug a little bit so that the sofa would be more on the rug. And look at the huge difference that just knowing how to move furniture makes. This is another amazing before and after of how to transform an entrance, which before was barely noticeable, to making it very attractive. Look at this entrance, before it wasn't making a statement, and look at the after. This is one example. When you open the door to this home, you see the staircase, which is not good feng shui. And then you also see the back of the home, which makes the energy leave as soon as it comes into the house. So it creates fatigued, tired homes. And look at the difference that just adding two things made. adding a piece of colorful art up here and a colorful vase on this side. Whereas before, you felt like you were coming into a staircase. On the after, you feel like you're coming into a home. And so all these before and afters that I'm showing you here, this is not of people who were working one-on-one with me. This is people who were participating in the Dream Home Lab, who learned the lessons, because we have a library of courses and lessons in the Dream Home Lab. They learned the lessons, they showed up to the meetings, they shared their photos, they asked me questions. And it's not just what happened to their homes, it's what happened in their lives, the level of satisfaction in their lives. So for example, this before and after of the kitchen, one of the positive things that happened is that the student, she started cooking at home more and eating healthier. In the before and after with the bed without the headboard and then with the headboard, also the couple who was extremely happy already, they realized, oh, wow, there's new levels of happiness you could have with a partner. These are some of the testimonials I have received on the Dream Home Lab. The Feng Shui Dream Home Creation Lab has brought me more happiness and security in life than I ever expected. I'm so grateful for the lab and Moni for wise and insightful guidance. My family is very pleased with the changes we have made to our home, creating happier, more useful and intentional spaces. Since working with Moni's system, my home has become a source of pride and inspiration for me. It has given me a new sense of power and possibility. I was recently introduced this concept, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing for decades. Slow decorating is the key to authentic interiors. So when you work with an interior designer, the interior designer comes, looks at your home, gives you a budget, and then they want to push you through it. They want to do everything really, really fast, really, really quickly. They give you a budget and they want to rush through it. And what that does, it makes you make many decisions rushed. You are forced to make decisions before you are ready, because sometimes you have to change the curtains before you can decide on the color of the couch. Sometimes you have to get the couch before you can even know what kinds of lamps you want for your living room. And so what we do in the Dream Home Lab is we do slow decorating. We give you time to make decisions and to get tasks completed in your home to make the next decision, so it becomes easier. So I am totally in love with this slow decorating concept that was shared on the House Beautiful page. It's important to go beyond style when you are wanting to create a dream home. It's not just about being stylish, it's about creating a home that feels good to you and where you can actually do all the things that you need to do for yourselves and the things that you would love to do. So in the Dream Home Lab, we talk about the foyer, the living room, the kitchen, the dining room, the primary bedroom, the children's bedrooms, but we also talk about craft rooms and playrooms and home gyms, the things that make your life more interesting, right? So questions for you: do you want a dream home? Do you want to make friends? Do you want a clear, clean, and tidy home? And so we can help you do all that. And I can become your guide if you join the Dream Home Lab. And so what are you waiting for if your home right now is not a home you love? There is much to gain. And the Dream Home Lab is a subscription. It is month to month. It is very inexpensive. There's no contract, so you can join for 1 month. There's a huge discount if you join for a year. There's no obligation to be there, right? You can choose when you join and you can choose when to leave. There's a lot for you waiting in the lab. So I want to thank you for being here. And I want to ask you 3 things. What did you like the most? What was the most valuable thing that you learned? And what is your take-home action? Yes.
It's Emily. I can answer. Okay. So I don't actually pay attention in general to what the trends are.
Yeah.
So I think what was more valuable to me is, like, understanding the idea that it is a pendulum swing.
Yes.
And your example of like what it was in 2020 and how that, had some value at that time, but
Yes.
they went overboard on the white and
totally
that
went
kind of
overboard.
thing. I don't know. That perspective is good. My take home action is, because I'm already a member of the Dream Lab and I hardly take advantage of it. I just need to get myself in there more. And I am changing things in my house like all the time. So maybe I should snap a few pictures and throw them in the Dream Home Lab
Yeah.
when I do those things and make decisions.
Yeah, that's wonderful feedback. So one of the things I did, let me go back to that slide. When I designed the Dream Home Lab, so we started the Dream Home Lab during COVID. And at the time, people wanted to be online a lot. So we did a lot of live lessons and meetings, right? And today, we just do office hours. So when you want feedback, you just show up. We used to have a group on Facebook, but Facebook has become so negative and so unsafe in some ways, right? That I have invested in my own group. That is a private group where you don't get any spam. You only interact with people in the group. When designing the Dream Home Lab and pricing the Dream Home Lab, I wanted to make sure that every one of these 4 aspects alone would be worth more than the price of the Dream Home Lab. So just the ability to ask me questions every day, I would charge a lot for that, Getting feedback from me, getting the one-on-one help meeting with me, I charge over 3 times the cost of the Dream Home Lab per month for half an hour of work with me. The home clearance, if you just called me and wanted me to do a list times home clearing for you, that would be $99 for one time. And with the Dream Home Lab, you get 4 clearance per month. So I wanted to make sure that it was really giving you your money's value and then some, a lot more. And so, yeah, show up for the meetings. You are telling me to update, but this class gives permission to leave what I love. Yeah, to make your home feel more modern or updated, you don't have to do a whole remodel. You can just add some key pieces. You can just redo a room. You could just change some wall colors. You could change, for example, if you wanted to update your dining room, it might be enough to change the chairs. Sometimes just changing the lighting in a living room is all that you need to do for it to feel like it's a completely new living room.
I liked seeing the different wallpapers. I hadn't seen them before, but I hadn't really seen any of the trends, so it was just interesting to see what was new and
Yeah.
without having to do it.
And I think we're going from minimalist to maximalist, right? And Feng Shui is like somewhere in the middle. It's not minimalist, it's not maximalist, but in some areas, for example, somebody who has trouble sleeping might do well having more of a minimalist bedroom. And but if you want to have more activity, more happy times in your family room, then you could go more towards the side of maximalist in the family room. But it's all up to you. You can do what you like, you can do what you love. And so, as I was telling you before, right, when I was planning this class, I was looking at about 8 trends, but I only wanted to do just 4 for the class. So the class wouldn't be 2 hours, but I have more coming to you. So stay tuned. And the emails that you're going to get for the next 2 weeks, we're going to explore other trends that could ruin your feng shui. And so we're going to be doing that. And of course, if you want to let me know if you would just like to meet with me to chat about joining the Dream Home Lab so I can give you a tour and I can show you all that we do. And as I was saying, everything that we used to do on Facebook before, now we do in a private group. So you get an app that is called Mighty Network, so you can go on your computer directly to the website. And so you can be there in a place where it's just protected, it's private, nobody's going to steal your identity or things like that. Thank you so much for being here. And let me know if you have any questions or any comments.
I was interested when you said about how the benches make for stress because not everybody could get up. But
yeah,
I remember growing up we ate in the kitchen and it was small, and 2 of the people couldn't move their chairs at all because they were totally blocked in, and it was a very stressful situation, like endless arguing, but it was a bad feng shui setup.
Yeah, even with chairs you could have trouble, right?
Yeah, because the chairs were like in a corner, so you couldn't possibly move it.
Yeah. And so when you don't have flow, there's going to be more irritation and more arguments become more likely when people are irritated.
I have a question on
Yeah,
what did you call it when you would uh paint everything one color?
drenching.
Drenching, yeah.
Yeah,
I've never done the ceiling, but many times, because I've always lived in old houses, and
yeah.
like even say the room I'm in now, there's three doors, one big window, and a china cupboard that are all built into the house. And it's like I had heard, way back in the early 90s or whatever, when I first set up housekeeping, that I would, that that many things in one room really divided up the room. And it was good to paint it all the same color, like the wood trim the same color and stuff, just so that it wasn't as interrupted. So that's kind of what I've done in every
So
room.
you're painting the trim the same color as what else?
The house, the walls, I mean, the walls of
Yeah.
each room. I mean, I don't have it this, each room would be the same. I mean, well, I should say that's what I've done to this room.
So one thing that happens, right? It's a very good question. In a home, doors are thresholds, right? And
Mhm.
so, for example, if you have the primary bedroom, the parents' bedroom, when the children go into that room, it's a threshold, and they're sort of inviting your privacy, right?
Right.
And when children, when they're teenagers and they each have their own bedroom, they may have rules about who can come in and at what time they can come in. And so those thresholds, they represent boundaries. When you paint a door to disappear, you are eliminating boundaries. So you can paint the door in the same color as the wall if you don't want it to be as noticeable. But when you paint the frame of the door in the same color, it is symbolically making the whole door disappear and making that boundary disappear. And so that is why it's not recommended in Feng Shui. And then the other reason is a very practical reason, right? That once you paint over wood trim, it's hard to strip if you change your mind
Mhm.
later on. But do you get the concept of this being a boundary thing? And like if you make
Um,
doors disappear, right?
yeah. What about like in, um, say this room, out of the three doors, only one door has a door. The others don't have doors.
Okay.
So, and so what, does that still matter? I mean, would it still be better to paint
Um,
the door trim a different color, or the trim, included with the trim color instead of
yeah.
the wall
So
color?
like there's styles and there's tastes, right? Um,
Hmm.
but from the Feng Shui perspective, a threshold is a threshold, is a portal, right? A door or a cased opening when you don't have a door is a portal. So you actually want to emphasize that instead of making it disappear. And that
Okay.
helps you separate the functions of the different rooms. And a lot of times when people live in a home and they argue a lot, it's lack of boundaries. So there are argument breeders. For example, doors that get stuck, drawers that are too full, um, benches. Those are argument breeders in dining tables. But there's also arguments that happen because of lack of boundaries. And so, for example, when if your spouse wants to use your living room as a workshop and sets up shop in your living room, right? And brings his tools in the living room, he's doing projects in the living room anymore all the time. So you no longer have a living room where you can sit down and read a book or invite your friends.
Hmm.
And so each room has a function, and having those clear boundaries help you respect the function of that room in the home, and that helps keep good relationships. When you start erasing those boundaries, the functions of the rooms kind of get blended. And so in some cases, right, if you have a kitchen in an open concept with a dining room, that's okay.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you are cooking a meal, you might take a cutting board to the dining table and chop some vegetables in the dining table, and that's not a problem because it's very similar functions that you have between the dining and the kitchen. But if you have an open concept between the primary bedroom and the bathroom, and you don't have a door to separate the bedroom from the bathroom, you're not going to take a bath in the middle of your bed, right? Like these are functions that you can just carry from one space to the other. So basically, you want to mark entrances rather than make them disappear. Now, if
Okay.
you truly love the look of the trim painted in the same color of the wall, by all means do it. And we'll find another way to mark the door. And it may be like putting some artwork on the sides of the door or on the sides of the case opening that helps you define that boundary, that portal. Yeah.
Okay.
Very good
Great.
question. Yeah.
Thank you.
I hope that you learn things that help you decorate your home in a way that it becomes yours and that you love it and that you get motivated to make more changes to turn your current home into your dream home. If you're watching the replay, the links that you need are going to be either under the video or you're going to be watching this video on the sign-on page for the Dream Home Lab. So if you scroll down, you'll see all the information of the Dream Home Lab, depending on how you watch the replay. Okay, and so I hope to see some of you join the Dream Home Lab and get the advantages, the home clearing, the ability to ask questions, the community, and the one-on-one sessions with me. Thank you for
Thank you.
being here. And
Thank you, Moni.
bye.